The general consensus about day 2 of the Microsoft versus FTC trial was that Microsoft came out looking pretty good, all things considered. They talked about how Starfield was almost a PlayStation 5 exclusive. They talked about why they're acquiring Indiana Jones. They made the FTC look kind of foolish. They doubled down on the fact that Call of Duty will come to PlayStation multiple times under oath. They also said the same thing about Diablo, and that's not just the PlayStation 5. They confirmed PlayStation 5 and future PlayStations. There's a lot to go over. Let's get into it right now. Let's start with the big one. I have about 12 quotes lined up. It was that big of a day. I'm going to make a whole separate video about reactions to this news, and let's just go right into it. Xbox confirmed that Starfield was almost a PlayStation 5 exclusive. This is Phil speaking to the FTC. What I'd say more recently is that with the competitor who's paying third parties to skip our platform, is that we felt it's necessary for us to secure ownership of more content so we can have more input into that content on our platform and in our subscription. ZeniMax is a great example of that. When we acquired ZeniMax, one of the impetus for that was that I don't know the word. Anyway, was that Sony had done a deal for Deathloop and Ghostwire, as came up yesterday, to effectively pay Bethesda to not ship those games on Xbox. It's exactly what Sony is doing with Final Fantasy and the Final Fantasy games. So they were going to do that with Deathloop and Ghostwire, but then he goes on. So the discussion about Starfield, when we heard that Starfield is potentially also going to end up skipping Xbox, we can't be in a position as a third place console where we fall further behind on our content ownership. So we had to secure content in order to remain viable in the business. If Xbox kept losing exclusives, they were done. So the reason they purchased Bethesda was because they're like, Sony's going to pay to make Starfield a PlayStation 5 exclusive. We can't keep losing these games that way. Let's make an offer to Bethesda. And they did, and they purchased Bethesda. A lot of people have had very strong reactions to this, saying, I can't believe Sony's been doing all this stuff behind closed doors. And my reaction was, welcome. We've known about this. Like, if you've been following this case, you know about the behind closed doors dealings where they're paying third-party developers not to post stuff on Xbox, not to release it on Game Pass, locking up exclusives for their platform. Xbox almost lost Call of Duty. So they almost lost Call of Duty. They almost lost Starfield. You're like, why is Xbox buying all these companies? Because Sony is trying to destroy them. That's why. So the option was Sony destroys Xbox, or Xbox buys Bethesda and Xbox buys Activision, and they remain relevant in the market. They go on, though. There's many more quotes to get through. I think the FTC did have a pretty strong argument about the degradation of games, and I apologize for the small text. FTC, Microsoft has not optimized Minecraft to be played on PlayStation 5, right? Oh, I wrote out 5. Anyway, we have not yet optimized Minecraft, the core game for PlayStation 5. Actually, instead of a PlayStation 5, if a gamer wants to play Minecraft, this is the FTC, they have to play the PlayStation 4 version, right? Sony was reluctant, this is Phil, to send us development kits for the PlayStation 5 at the same time they were sending development kits to other developers, which put our game at a disadvantage relative to other PlayStation games that were launching, which put us behind in our development of Minecraft on PlayStation 5. FTC, when did that happen? When did those developer kits show up? Not kids. Anyway, I don't have an exact date. The PlayStation 5 launched in 2020 also, right? Yes, that's been 3 years, right? The launch of the PlayStation and our content not being held at a disadvantage by the platform holder by withholding development kits from us and not from the other competitive content creators is pretty significant, and it shows a pretty significant lack of support for us by the platform holder, which hurts our ability to compete. And then with Minecraft, which I know you're aware is a very big product shipping on 20 plus platforms, we have to be very diligent in our use of these resources on Minecraft to make sure that we're doing the best thing for Minecraft, for the Minecraft community. PlayStation would not send Xbox PlayStation 5 development kits because they're a competitor. That makes sense. But the argument the FTC is trying to paint here is that they've had the development kits for a while. The PlayStation community still does not have the enhanced version of Minecraft. Why is that? The argument the FTC is trying to lay out is that Microsoft is purposefully degrading games on other platforms. And honestly, I think that was their only good point throughout the entirety of the trial. The rest of it, you'll see the judge actually got kind of upset with them. And if you like my content, by the way, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. I really appreciate you watching. This is my personal take on it, my reactions, the stuff I thought was the most interesting from the case. If you're already subscribed, hit that like button because it helps the video get shared. Quote 4, Elder Scrolls could still come to the next PlayStation. FTC, Elder Scrolls 6 is a ZeniMax game, right? It is not a ZeniMax game yet. It is many years away, but it is a game that we've announced that we would begin working on. The public announcement also said that there was a plan to not launch the game on PS5, right? I think we've been a little unclear on what platforms it's launched on, given how far out the game is. The FTC pressed the question. As I said with Elder Scrolls 6, it's so far out, it's hard to understand what the platforms will even be. At this point, it's the same team that's finishing Starfield, which comes out this September. So there is a chance that Elder Scrolls 6 could still come to the PlayStation 5, 6, whatever we're on by that point. But Todd Howard has said that game's far away. Like Phil Spencer's saying the game's far away. Don't expect anything about Elder Scrolls anytime soon. The Indiana Jones exclusivity deal is about dealing with other Disney properties like Spider-Man, which would allow Xbox to better compete. So my request for the team was to go back and open up a discussion with Disney first about ensuring that we could ship our game on Game Pass, and then a discussion about what platforms would be. One of Sony's biggest exclusive games since Spider-Man. Also, a Disney-owned IP that doesn't ship on Xbox, and in competing effectively with them, I think that it's important that we have an outside gaming known IP that is part of our portfolio. So what he's outlining there is he's like, look, they have Spider-Man. We needed an answer to Spider-Man. So we secured Indiana Jones exclusivity, which, by the way, if you didn't hear the other day, that game will be exclusive. Now, this one gets really spicy. Phil Spencer made it crystal clear that he has every intention of launching Call of Duty on PlayStation. And the next 3 slides are him saying that as many different ways as he possibly can. So we already heard from Jim Ryan, who said he knew this would never be exclusive. So he's just been lying the whole time. And now we're going to hear from Phil Spencer, who is committing to release Call of Duty under oath on PlayStation and future PlayStations. A lot of people thought it was a gotcha because he said PlayStation 5 and he was trying to be tricky. Then he clarified like 3 more times that he means PlayStation and all future PlayStations. Anyway, the judge asked him, you're testifying under oath that you will make future versions of Call of Duty available for the PlayStation 5. You will invest with the developer. Sony has to let you do that, but you're testifying under oath that you will do that. Absolutely. I would do it. I would raise my hand. I will do whatever it takes. We have no plans to pull Call of Duty. Judge, putting aside a plan, Phil, I'm making a commitment standing here that we will not pull Call of Duty. It is my testimony from PlayStation. And as you said, Sony obviously has to allow us to ship the game on their platform. But absent of any of that, my commitment is, and my testimony is, that we will continue to ship future versions of Call of Duty on Sony's PlayStation 5. Phil later, I made a public statement as the deal was announced where I said, we are committed to continuing to ship Call of Duty not only, I don't know what I typed there, not only on the PlayStation 5, but future versions of PlayStation. I'll guess that there will be future PlayStations that we would want to continue, and publicly Sony affirmed that they believed our commitment, or my commitment, that we will continue to ship Call of Duty on PlayStation is true, right? continuing, or Sony agreed, and they're like, we believe you will ship it on PlayStation, because there's no monetary advantage to them pulling it from that platform. Phil later, the Activision games will remain cross-platform. Phil later, again, on Call of Duty, just specifically, you asked me the question right before lunch. I want to be clear. Yes, under testimony, Call of Duty will remain on the PlayStation 5 and future versions, as I said, of PlayStation. I could imagine maybe somebody thinks there's some kind of game I'm playing on which version of the console that I'm committing to. Our goal is to continue to make Call of Duty a great game for this PlayStation and future PlayStations. How much clearer does he need to be about this situation? Then the FTC asked him again about Call of Duty. Phil said, my goal is that we would ship Call of Duty on all versions of PlayStation. I don't own the future versions of PlayStation, nor can I even dictate that there are future versions of PlayStation. So I just want to understand exactly what the question is that you're asking. Can you, the FTC said, can you swear under oath that you can promise that you'll ship Call of Duty on PlayStation, all the future versions, whatever they might be, for 10 years without knowing what the terms of the parties are going to agree to? Judge is like, no, that's not true. They're not going to do it for $0. FTC, exactly. And the judge is like, well, that's understood. The judges started getting fed up with the FTC because he's like, this dude has said he wants, like, he's committed to it under oath that they will put Call of Duty on PlayStation. And now you're like trying to gotcha moment him, and it's not holding water with anybody. Well, no, that was understood. So then later, the FTC asked about the 10-year Call of Duty contract with PlayStation. Phil, Sony. So yeah, actually, this one is more about us learning more about how Sony is handling the negotiation process within Call of Duty, right? Phil, Sony is asking for significant commitments beyond the standard shipping of the game on the platform that has caused, as you said, the deal to go back and forth, even though we know how to ship a game at parity on PlayStation, which we do on a regular basis. FTC, would you make that same promise with respect to all Activision content? Phil says, I was asked specifically about Call of Duty. Activision ships games on mobile and many different platforms. They have some PC-only games like World of Warcraft. I don't think there's a blanket statement you could make for Activision Blizzard being on PlayStation. What about Diablo? Can you promise you'll ship? Can I promise? I am able to promise yes. FTC, you're able to bind Microsoft today. You're able to bind the corporation here today. Judge is like, why don't we move along? The judge cut him off, and apparently there was like an audible gasp in the courtroom, according to, I think Florian Mueller said that. And people were like, whoa, because the judge was like, look, you made your point. Just move on to the next statement. Now, some of the more interesting stuff here. Was Xbox in bigger trouble than we thought? This is about Phil getting at the heart of why they acquired mobile. Let's read what they said, and I don't think anybody really commented on this, but to me, I'm like, I think Xbox was in pretty big trouble. There were rumors that it could be spun off or sold off or something like that. And this was the first time I'm like, oh, maybe those were sort of true. Phil, every time we'd sit down with the Microsoft board or the senior leadership team, while they might appreciate our strategy on console PC, it was pretty clear that if we did not have a strategy that found success on mobile, our relevance in the market was going to continue to shrink. If you're on the two platforms that are not growing, and there's a third platform called mobile phones, that's the sole source of growth, you're going to be less and less relevant to this platform. So we looked at an acquisition strategy. Now, the console market, to Phil, he's saying it's flat. There's no console market future. That's what Sony's tripling down on. They're touting all these great console sales. Phil's like, we lost. And he says that later. He talks about the console wars. He's like, we lost the console wars. We don't care about the console wars anymore. That's not what we're focusing on. We're trying a different strategy. But it sounds like it was a little bit more dire, which is why the Activision move and the Bethesda move happened. Anyway, he goes on later to say that the gaming business inside of Microsoft actually runs as a standalone profit and loss business inside of Microsoft. It's one of the few Microsoft CSS aids, as we've used before. or a business that runs that way. And we have a commitment to the company and the board to run a profitable and growing business where we are effectively a standalone business inside of Microsoft. And Phil later commented that they are not making their goals today. So that kind of made me wonder, like, this whole we're all in on Xbox, this is Satya Nadella again committing to the idea that they're going to support Xbox for the foreseeable future and that they are making a big play here on gaming. That's the reason for the purchase. Now, if this purchase doesn't go through, I think Xbox would be okay, but I am sort of curious hearing that they're not meeting their goals and hearing all this stuff, if any shakeups happen afterwards. Anyway, let's continue on. Apparently, Activision is worth a lot more than $70 billion. So, I mean, that goes without saying, but reading the reaction in the room was a little surprising. So to try and characterize the $70 billion as somehow spent is incorrect. Okay, yeah. The FTC came out and was like, so you just threw away the $70 billion, like you spent it, that money's gone. And Phil Spencer had to like explain to him how it's more like buying a house than going to a movie. Like the money's not just gone. They plan to recoup that investment. So to try to characterize the $70 billion as somehow spent is incorrect financially. It's really moving $70 billion in cash into an asset, which as a game publisher, that to us is actually worth more than $70 billion. So it's not spent, FTC. So the number about the value in the board deck, right? That number is bigger than $70 billion, right? Phil, that number is the value to Microsoft, not what we're spending in the market. Quite larger than $70 billion, right? Said the FTC. Phil, yes, it is. As a company, I'm adding a little flavor to it, but anyway, as a company, when we're going to put that much capital, let me just mute my camera here for a second, $70 billion into the market, the company is going to look to make money on the money it spends. So there'd be no reason to look at the transaction if the value to Microsoft was equal or less than what would be spent or what we would spend. That's significant. So what is it worth? Is it like $100 billion value when they're spending $70 billion on it? Microsoft has big plans with Activision if this goes through. I've always said that I think this will put them like neck and neck with PlayStation. And I think that would be good for the entirety of the industry. So we'll see what happens. But to me, if they're saying that they're spending $70 billion and to them it's worth like $100 billion, because they talk about the mobile market and how big the mobile market is, I find that very, very interesting. And it's interesting to me that one of the first things I reacted to was like, they get King, and King publishes Candy Crush and it publishes Call of Duty. And they reacted a little bit to the financials in a different thing I didn't tweet out, but they reacted saying they were surprised by how much money those IPs made. So mobile is a huge market. Sony's getting into it. Xbox is getting into it. Don't think it's going away anytime soon. Oh, the FTC looked really bad a few times. The FTC straight up got shut down by the judge again. And I think this is the one where people were like, whoa, okay. Anyway, the FTC, just going back to the commitment, not to try anyone's patience or anything. I think you asked me about PlayStation. Can you make those same commitments under oath with respect to cloud? And the judge is like, what cloud? FTC is like, Sony's cloud that you would ship. And the judge is like, I don't think that's it. I'm going to cut off the question there because he had committed already like 10 times under oath. He's like, how much clearer can I make this? To be fair, I do think the FTC had a good question. They were like, can you also commit that you're going to release it on cloud? And I'm sure Phil would have said yes, but we will never know because the judge has heard enough. She's heard the response and she doesn't need to hear it again. Now, the FTC did look very silly a few times. The FTC is going to grow. Oh, FTC, Microsoft is going to grow, particularly in a business like console, and it can grow by taking share away from its competitors. Phil says there's no growth. There's no console growth in our deal model. FTC says, I understand, but do you have any intention of this deal helping you climb out of the number 3 spot? In console, we do not. FTC, okay, so that's just a write-off? Phil says, I don't understand how that's a write-off. The FTC was trying to paint this picture like they're throwing away $70 billion. And Phil's like, and then that prompted Phil to explain to him how buying a house works. Like, you're not like throwing that money away. You're putting it into an asset and you're hoping the asset grows with you over time. You're not just like, you're not buying groceries and then consuming that resource and then it's done, right? There were a few other things. Phil Spencer called the console wars a social construct. FTC, you think that Microsoft's gaming Xbox lost the console war? Phil says, as the console wars is a social construct with the community, I would never want to count our community out. They are big fans. If you look at our market share in the console space over the last 20 plus years, we're in third place. We've remained in third place for quite a while. And part of the reason that means in particular effect is that Xbox just didn't sell as much as, say, Sony. We're behind Sony and Nintendo in console share globally. I don't know how that helps the FTC painting this picture that Microsoft is bad. And the last note I had is like the Stadia testimony came out. And I think that was an FTC witness. The FTC called the Stadia representative and it didn't help them at all. Some of the points that were made, they testified that Stadia competed with Xbox, but also Steam and Epic. And he listed Sony as their main cloud gaming competitor, not Xbox. They listed NVIDIA's GeForce Now as a competitor. And they said, I believe with more content, we would have seen success with Stadia. So the FTC is trying to paint this picture that Microsoft withholding content from Stadia somehow killed it or something. But at the end of the day, Stadia never really identified Xbox as a competitor. And as a matter of fact, they were asked like, so was xCloud even available at the time? And the guy said, no, I don't think it was available at the time. I think it was, like, in reality, I do think it was, but this person on the stand just seemed to not think that Xbox was any sort of competitor in the market when Stadia was in the market. So I don't understand how this helped the FTC. They identified that there's many people in cloud gaming. They identified that PC and PlayStation 5 are also competitors. Like, and the FTC came back and asked like one question. The judge even cut off the Microsoft representative. She's like, you've made your point. Like, you weren't even in the market at the time. Like, this testimony is a waste of my time. So long story short, the FTC spent like the first hour of the day trying to paint the picture that the Switch is less powerful than the Xbox Series X and S. Next time, just like come out and say, just ask the question straight up and you can save everybody an hour. Everybody gets it. It's less powerful, but you know what? It still sells better than both of the platforms combined. He tried to allude to some emails. He's like, oh, what does this mean? It looks like one time the Switch sold less. And Phil's like, this is like third-party data. I don't even know what point you're trying to make here. All in all, the general consensus is that the FTC seems to not really understand the case that they're fighting or what they're trying to win here. There were a few moments where the FTC actually seemed to stammer and not quite realize that they've made a mistake. And yeah, so that's the main stuff from day two. It seemed like a very good day for Xbox. That seemed to be the general consensus. There's a ton more stuff, like Lulu Cheng Maservi put out something internally at Activision. I'm going to do that in a separate video, I think, because we're already at like 23 minutes. But thank you so much for watching. And if you like my content, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. I plan on doing recaps for the 5 days. This is one of the most important trials for the games industry that we've ever seen. We're getting a lot of dirty laundry. A lot of public perception of how Sony works behind closed doors is shifting. And I think we're seeing the tide turn back to Microsoft's favor. And then, you know, Microsoft will probably do a bunch of dumb stuff in like 5 years. And then we'll be like, oh, remember, let's go back to the Sony days. And then Sony will go back. Like, that's just how it goes, right? Ebbs and flows. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you want to become a member and see all these videos without ads, click that join button. I post the same video, no ads. And I really appreciate all the members. Really, it's just a way you can support the channel. So if you want to be a supporter, click that join button. I do need to update the member list, actually. Lots to do. I'll catch you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.